Brant DXT grain carts have efficient unload speeds, large carrying capacities, unmatched durability, and reliable components that make sure your cart is working when you are. Lead the field with DXT grain carts from Brant. Visit your local Brant dealer for more information.
You're listening to Ruminating with RealAg, the podcast that chews on the latest in beef production, with your host, Amber Bell.
This is Ruminating with RealAg, and I'm your host, Amber Bell. For today's episode, I'm really excited to be talking with Jaime Elizondo of Real Wealth Ranching. So Jaime teaches what he has coined total grazing. He's consulted all around the world with this. He's seen his systems work in Canada, in Colombia, and even across the ocean in environments such as France and Scotland. So he's an agronomist. He has a background in ruminant nutrition. He's worked in dairies, and he even has a background in accounting, which is something that's kind of unique to a lot of these different programs. So welcome, Jaime. It is wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank you, Amber. I love the name Ruminating because we're dealing with ruminants, and that's my specialty nutrition-wise. I am a dairy nutritionist with over 25 years experience.
Yeah, and you don't even just have dairy nutrition background, but you also come from an accounting background. I was reading on your bio. Is that right?
Yeah, beef cows all my life, my father, my grandfather, and I love beef cows. But I had a graze dairy for 28 years that I just recently switched to beef because that was our life goal at this age. Yeah.
Okay, and there's a lot of different schools of thought when it comes to grazing management, but you kind of take it a little bit differently. So can you talk a little bit about your four pillars? And actually, let's back up a little bit. Let's go to kind of where you started and the program you're running now, because you're running Real Wealth Ranching. So can you talk a little bit about the background of that, I guess, before we get into all the meat and potatoes?
Sure. I bought my first farm in 1990. I had graduated from agronomy engineer, majored in ruminants in 1984. So it took me 6 years to buy my first farm. I started a business, a cheese factory and yogurt. So when I started the farm, I didn't make any money applying conventional methods, and I was degrading the soil. Now that farm is beautiful, but that's 24 years later. But I read a book that changed my point of view about grazing and economics. And it's called From Grass to Milk by McKinnon, written in the 60s in New Zealand. In that book, he pointed out that what determines profits is the number of livestock you can carry, productive livestock you can carry at a low cost per farm per year. So I started doing that, and I went up to 4 stockers per acre in the green season, which over there is like 8 months, and then put them into a feedlot in winter. So that worked well for me, but money just wasn't very good. So I started doing my numbers with graze dairy, and that's what gave the most revenue. So I switched. Yeah.
With grass dairy. And it's interesting because you do a rotation with your grass management, right?
Well, if you only do rotation, you're missing the whole picture. When I say the whole picture, I'm talking about how nature performed before man, not after man came and saw a degraded, modern Europeans, white people came and saw a degraded ecosystem. No, before any man came. And the grazing was done by herbivores, as we know, and they could migrate, and they were followed by predators, which took out the weak and infirm.
Right.
But most importantly, half by mass of all those herbivores were ruminants, and the other half were hind-gut fermenters. When you understand this, that changes the whole picture, and now it ties correctly with basic plant physiology, which doesn't tie when you do different theories.
So with predators taking out the weak, because one of your four pillars is genetics, and I guess that's kind of where that comes into play. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh yeah, that's very important. When you get adapted genetics into your herd by selecting from your very best and longest productive longevity cows to use bulls produced by them to spread their genes into your herd, you get much lower input cost, much higher productivity per acre, because that allows you to achieve a higher harvest efficiency when grazing without losing productivity. So that's the most important part of the adaptive genetics, because we are requiring our livestock, all ruminants, cattle, sheep, and goats, to perform the work done time ago by half of them being hindgut fermenters. Now we need to do it with one species.
Right. And how does it differ between dairy and beef cattle? So
Oh,
I'm thinking like when you're right, like you have a lot more requirements when you're running a dairy herd. You need to be with them every day. So what does that look like?
well, on a grass dairy, I would suggest to move them twice a day after each milking. Uh, Get them on younger and leafier pasture to maintain high productivity in the green season. And then when they are dry, the cows, put them on stockpile grass in that same farm. And that stockpiling area that you need to alternate through the years, every year. So at the end of, let's say, 5 years on a grass dairy, you have regenerated or renovated the grassroots, the spongy soil, and the white grounds in your best grass species. If you don't do that and you keep grazing rotationally with quality as your first focus, you're going to ruin your land at the end. And humus content will not increase. Humus content is long-lived soil carbon. And that only increases when you stockpile. This is the new paradigm that I bring into the grazing world. That
Right.
yeah, go ahead.
How many head of cattle have you seen this work on in a dairy? Like I'm trying to figure out
Okay,
because
yeah.
up here in Canada we don't have a ton of grass dairies.
Oh,
And if we do, they're fairly small scale. So a lot of
no,
our
no, no,
dairies are a lot
no,
larger. No?
not true. No, I went to consult for one 10 days ago, and
Hmm.
they had 320 cows,
Okay.
milk twice a day, graze.
Wow.
So that's what I had, 320 cows. But a student of mine, a client and friend in North Wales, he has 750. So
Wow.
yeah, it can be done in a big scale or a small scale.
And still improving the land while
Oh
you're
yeah,
doing it.
yeah. We win the land of synthetic nitrogen because they were doing the Kiwi system from imported from New Zealand.
Hmm.
All of it, even the chair milker and everything. So we started gradually taking the synthetic nitrogen off, and we came from 400 kilos per hectare per year to zero by the fourth year. We now no loss in production,
No loss and that's in the grass production.
grass production and milk production.
Okay. And has the milk quality, like, have there been any tests on the milk quality to see if it's still the
It
same or
was
better?
improving. It was improving by the second and third year. The quality, the somatic cell counts went down, and the milk urea nitrogen went down, and that's what you want because to get productive longevity, you want the milk urea nitrogen not to be above 8 to 12.
Right. That's incredible. And then if you look at, so coming back up here to Canada or some of our colder winter weather, I would wonder how does the grass-fed dairy work in our winters? What would be
Okay,
what you recommend usually in that?
yeah, all their dry cows were out wintered under the snow as long as the snow doesn't get deeper than 2 feet. When I
Okay.
was there, the snow was less than a foot deep. So the cows were doing well. I'm talking Holsteins and Jerseys and Ayrshire crosses. And the dairy herd was kept indoors and fed a conserved forage diet. By the way, their nutrition is good because
Yeah.
I couldn't smell the ammonia. That means they were not releasing ammonia, and their milk urea nitrogen was between 8 and 10. So that's good.
Mm.
But we could still improve by increasing the energy a little and increasing the protein a little and balancing for oxygen. That's how I balance dairy rations. And that will make you like a savings of $900 a day,
Wow.
Canadian dollars in that herd size, and a little higher milk production. So, yeah. it can still be tweaked a little, even though that's a good dairy ration.
Have you seen any dairies that are doing some wintering, like bale grazing or swath grazing or anything like that? Are they able to do that as a dairy?
Yes, in that dairy that I told you about, but only the dry cows,
Okay.
because the lactating cows, well, they need to be out of the weather to not drop in milk production and to make you money.
So if you cycle them, then you're kind of
Yes,
getting the best of both worlds.
in the winter, but come spring, they all go out, of
They
course.
all go up.
But as soon as the grass has matured enough to avoid scours.
Okay. And then let's go into a little bit of what nutrition and the genetics look like when it
Mhm.
comes to dairy herds, because it's
Yeah.
something that I know almost nothing about. I haven't done much with dairy outside of having one milk goat, and I don't think that really counts.
Well, not really. But have you heard about epigenetics?
Hmm.
Okay, it's a fancy word to describe the turning on or off of the expression of genes given by the environment. That's what it is. And that means that your cattle that have been born in your farm will have the best expression of their genes for your farm. So when you bring semen or bulls from outside, you're not progressing as you should because of that. Even though they were the best under a different management, different latitude, different environment, they might not be the best for your farm. That's why I start with selecting your very best cows based on productive longevity. Cows that never miss, cows that are in the top 10% in milk production, solids, not just
Hmm.
water, solids. And then we measure them, hip height, weight, and we get the very best to produce our best bulls from, and then we can spread those cows' genes into your herd.
Right. I was talking with a geneticist on an earlier episode, and we were talking about how hard it can be to bring in, say, a Canadian bull to Mexico because the environment is just so extremely different that you're going to end up having problems. So that's basically what you're talking about, right?
Well, yes. Now let's talk about something that is very interesting. Back in 1960 in New Zealand, the cows, a good Jersey cow, weighed 380 kilos, 360 kilos. Now they weigh 500 kilos. Why? Are they more productive per acre? No. Are they more productive per cow? Yes. But the cost of producing a liter of milk is higher. So I have friends in Mexico that are importing semen from Frisians in Germany from 60 years ago. And those cows weigh 360 kilos, and they are converting each ton of feed to milk solids because they make cheese more efficiently. So they are way ahead of everybody else.
That's amazing. And now, how do you recommend then? Because I'm imagining as a dairy producer, I go out and I'm wanting to, calculate, okay, well, what traits am I going to pick for? What am I going to choose for? Right? How do you calculate what's going to be the most profitable? Because a lot of people think, and I think that's the way our genetics have gone, is we go to what makes the most production, and it doesn't matter anything else, right? We kind of
I,
write
I,
off everything else.
I would ask per ton of grass or per cow.
Oh.
We produce grass and feedstuff. So we need
Hmm.
to convert that as efficiently as possible to milk solids. When we go for larger and larger sizes, let's say in Canada beyond 500 kilos, we are shooting our foot. We are dropping our feed conversion efficiency and we are leaving money on the table.
Right.
That's true.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And do you calculate out? So I know within beef cattle, we've seen, some cows, they have to have their hooves trimmed all the time, right? And that's expensive though to get that done. And it's time consuming. And so have you found that there's some of those traits that you recommend people select for too? Like, just
Yes,
strength and
yes.
continuity,
Yeah, remember productive longevity that I talked about? That means all of that.
right?
Cattle, cows that never require any inputs or labor. I identified some very good cows there at that dairy race area I went to in Manitoba, Canada. And they were not the taller cows. I even made a video where a cow is double, a Holstein, is double the size of a Archer cross cow. But when we went to look at their body condition, the Archer was fatter, in very good body condition, while the Holstein was very poor. Then milk production. The Ayrshire cross was giving 43 liters a day average, and the other one 38, a double the size.
Wow.
That means conversion efficiency.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
And so going back to grazing, what are some of the ways that beef cattle, what are some of the things you really need to consider in the differences between dairy and beef? I'd imagine
Yeah.
that some of it's a little bit like changes up a bit.
It, a little bit. It's a lot similar. In dairy breeds, you want the bull to look like a bull, very masculine, not like those steer-like bulls that they sell semen from. That's because of wrong selection guidelines, where they are focusing only in production per cow.
Mm,
So when they do that, they start to get taller and later maturing cows. And that's why the bulls out of those cows look like a steer. They have no sexual dimorphism. That's the difference between a male and a female. They do not weigh 50% more than the cows because the cows are so huge that they just simply cannot.
right.
But when you select according to nature with your best interest in mind, that means conversion of each ton of feedstuff to milk solids, then you start selecting just as we do with beef. Shorter but longer because they tend to mature earlier, and
Hmm.
that means their sexual hormones start to be produced at puberty, and that slows down the production of the growth hormones. So they slow down in height growth, but start increasing in length growth. So you can see that visually. It's very easy. Then bone, is the bone slender or heavy? You do not want heavy bones. That means late maturing. Late maturing cattle also have a longer gestation length, which leads to higher birth weights dystocia.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so really when selecting, it's the same. But what about nutrition when grazing, right? Are
I'm
you
not,
looking for the higher protein then at that time? Because,
no. I am looking in the green season under the total grazing program, where we divide the farm in three sections.
hmm,
In the green season are focusing on highest production possible per cow.
okay.
Okay, per cow,
Yeah,
because we don't want to be those type of people that say, yeah, you produce a lot of grass, but your production per cow is mediocre. No, we want the highest winning weights, the highest daily gains, and the highest milk production possible. But what comes first? Livestock health. If you attain livestock health, that will lead you to highest milk or
production,
body gain production. And if you give that, that will give you the higher conversion efficiency. It's
right?
in that order. First
Hmm.
health, then daily performance, and then conversion efficiency.
And then it
Why?
kind of comes together.
Yeah, it comes together because conversion efficiency depends on how high productivity is per day, because then that gets diluted by the maintenance, energy requirements, and then you get more productivity per ton of feed. That's it.
Right. And so what forage mix are you looking at in order
Oh,
to
okay.
achieve that?
Yeah, in Canada, I would much prefer permanent perennial pastures,
Hmm.
perennials. You can do a no-till drill into them to get higher productivity if you have a grass dairy. Not so profitable if you have a beef cow herd. But once you start increasing your soil long-lived carbon, then you start getting the best species come back because your soil starts to act as if you are irrigating or it rains more and as if you were fertilizing. Soil carbon is that important. And it doesn't increase when you are rotational grazing. I proved that in different environments in Iowa, Minnesota, and in the tropics.
You don't. So could we talk a little bit about the terms? because I feel like there are a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
terms
yeah, yeah.
within this, right? So you said that rotational grazing doesn't increase the soil carbon, the long-term soil carbon. What are you looking at as rotational grazing in that structure?
Yeah, where people move the cows around every time they finish the green leaves,
Hmm.
and they are moved to the next paddock, and then they come back. Like what I am proposing is to, instead of doing that, divide the farm in three sections with your focus on quality in the green season, while you create standing hay in area, in a third of your farm at least,
Hmm.
to feed your standing hay to your cattle, beef cows in this instance, in the difficult seasons of the year. That way, you avoid overgrazing, which is regrazing a plant before it's fully recovered. Alan Savory came up with that definition, and I love it. That's true. He got it from André Boissin, where I got it too. In 1960, he wrote his book, Grass Productivity. It will be
Hmm.
wise to read it. And then you can see that by minimizing overgrazing in the green season, you can produce 3 times more grass per farm
Right.
without inputs.
So what is, if you're breaking it up into three sections, what would be your graze period versus your rest period? And how does it differ in different environments?
Well, you know that changes
Hmm.
depending, was it a good year or was it a dry year? For example, in Alberta, Canada, Fishburne Ranch, this year they had a drought year, the less than half the rainfall. But they still got very good daily gains in high stocking rate because they followed the total grazing program. So how does it look like in real life? Well, you wait until your cool season grasses are mature enough to avoid scours in your livestock.
Hmm.
That's health first.
Yeah.
Then you graze as hard as your daily gains goals allow you to. So they at the end they got a 1.8 pounds per day daily gain. Then that will give you the best conversion efficiency because you have a high stocking rate to achieve that.
Hmm.
So even though their daily gains were not 2.5 pounds as we wanted in a good year, they still got 120 pounds per acre gain due to their higher stocking rate. Each paddock is 50 to 100 hectares. We
Hmm.
further subdivide with polybraid, which gets further subdivided in strips for
Okay.
4 breaks a day. That's the
Right.
optimum.
Yeah.
If you cannot do 4 breaks a day, you go to 1 break a day.
Right.
That requires better nutritionally adapted genetics. If you cannot do that, if you cannot do once a day, then go to once every 2 or 3 weeks. Do not go to once a week. That's the worst thing you can do under a high
Why?
harvest efficiency grazing.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Why is that?
Sure, because the rumen digests in batches,
Hmm.
and we have 4 to 5 movements per day. So that's why the 4 breaks a day gives you the better performance and conversion efficiency or harvest efficiency, sorry. When you cannot do that, you go to once a day, and still the variation in the feed coming into the rumen is not so huge. But when
Right.
you move them every 3 days or every 7 days, the different types of microbes in the rumen, we have 5. One type of them will digest fiber, another fats, another sugars, another starches, and another, I don't remember right now, another one. And they need to be in balance between them to efficiently convert or digest the forage. When you change the diet, just like in a dairy ration or in a finishing ration, and the first 5 to 7 days, they are trying to get it adjusted. When you
Hmm.
move them every 3 days or every 7 days for a total graze to finish everything, the first day they have very high quality and quantity. By midweek, they have low quality and quantity. And at the last 3 days, they have very low quality and quantity. So they are always trying to catch up. And that's why people get disenchanted because they didn't do it right. They were not coached by a nutritionist.
Yeah. And then, so why would you say 3 to 4 weeks if you were to
I
go to
said
that?
3 to 4 weeks because that gives ample time for these 5 groups of microbes in the rumen to adjust to the changing ration.
Okay. Huh, I've never had that explained like that before. That's really interesting.
You didn't talk to a nutritionist who had knowledge of this. And this is what allows me to understand the whole picture or the whole between the grazing, nutrition, and economics, because I am also an accountant.
And yeah, you did say that your background, your bio said that you have an accounting background, and
Yes.
that's really interesting. I was talking to a friend a while ago, and they were talking about when strip grazing, so that's, moving multiple times a day, that you definitely need to allow them time to ruminate in between
Yes.
each move. And so that kind of speaks to that, and that explains a lot of it. That gives a lot more background knowledge for that.
The cows graze for 8 hours a day on average. They ruminate for 8 hours a day, and they sleep for an hour and a half per day. That's it. So we don't need to be out there day and night moving them. No. We just need to
Hmm.
be out there with them 6 hours a day. That's it. Easy.
Right, that's amazing. And do you think that that ability, because I mean, up here versus, let's say, Mexico, the labor cost is a lot more up here. Do you find
Yeah.
that that is reflected in what you'd recommend for people for moves?
Yes, yes. And the design, it's all in the design. That
Hmm.
28,000 acre ranch that I told you, I went to design it. The water and the alleys and the grazing for one person to be able to manage two herds of 1,000 cows pairs each. One person. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we always think about that, even in lower wage situations, because it's hard to find good help. And you want to make them partner with you so they get a share of the profits that they implement, thanks to them. Yes.
Right. So you do that down in Mexico too.
Oh, yes. I
I'm
just
really
gave them a
curious about how
bonus
that works
today.
down there.
Well, depends on how they do their job. And
Hmm.
you need to train them. I have people that have been with me 20 years. So I do really treat them well and they respond. If they don't, just like a cow, you need to hold them.
That's fantastic. I like it. So talk a little bit about the soil carbon. Let's go into that. Let's dive a little bit deeper there.
Okay.
And what are you looking for? So when you go and put your shovel in the ground, what is going to tell you whether or not it's been a good grazing system?
Even before you put the shovel in the ground, you will feel it when you walk. Is the soil spongy or not?
Hmm.
What are your interplant spacings? Are they close together with strong and deep roots or not? What is the biodiversity you are observing? Do you only have a monoculture or three or four, or you have 16 or 20 different species? Uh, what is the stocking rate? Have you been able to steadily increase your stocking rate year over year, or you're stagnated in that?
Hmm.
All of that comes together because we want the maximum today's profits and the maximum tomorrow's profits. We need to think about that, not only today's. That's why I do not ever use synthetic fertilizers.
Right. Right. Because that does today, but long term, it's not going to help.
Medium term, the soil in that farm in North Wales got hard like a rock because
Okay.
synthetic nitrogen functions by killing soil life. And when you kill soil life, specifically fungi, the soil hardens. When you
Hmm.
have more fungi than bacteria, your soil gets spongy. Fungi produce long-lived carbon. Bacteria consumes it.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Do you find that there's ever a point where the soil carbon kind of caps out, where your grazing management, you've just gotten to as good as it's going to get?
I love that question. Have you wondered if carbon is created down into the soil or the soil grows upwards?
I think it's created down into the soil.
No, it grows
No?
upwards, and we have measured it. You can grow in Canada, let's say, half an inch per year of soil, but it grows upwards. That means that when people are measuring 12 inches deep, they are effectively making it a mistake because soil grows upwards. Just look at the disappearing rocks in Ireland. Go to Google and look at how over 50 years the boulders are covered by soil.
So, because one of the I think it's an old scientific study that was done, and I know some schools still teach it. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's like over 100 years you grow a very small amount of soil. So, what do you say to that? Because I've had a lot of different debates on how that works.
I said that people that deny what we are getting should make way for people doing it. I mean, it's working. Worldwide. We're doing it in North Wales, we're doing it in Spain, Portugal, Italy, Canada, of course, all over the United States, South America, South Africa, also, Zambia, also in Zambia, in Australia, and New Zealand. Yeah.
Wow. And how long term? So I guess that would be the next question. How long before you actually start seeing results from total grazing?
As soon as you minimize overgrazing by total grazing, you start to get stronger and deeper roots. And when you start stockpiling, you will get much more vigorous regrowth, leafier regrowth in that area next spring. But you will start to see the full benefit in 2 or 3 years.
In 2 or 3, okay.
But from
But
the
it should
start,
be increasing, kind of.
yes, just like when you select your bulls correctly, you start to see the very next calf crop do better. The same happens with the grazing. Yeah. And grazing is faster to improve than genetics. So start both at the same time.
Right. How did your accounting degree, how did that come into play? And how have you used that in the real wealth ranching?
Yes. First by experience. Once I understood that the profits of a farm are determined by stocking rate, I went to learn and practice grazing methods that allowed a very high stocking rate. So I had over years 10 stockers per hectare per year. Did I do overgrazing? Yes. Did I stockpile? No, I didn't know back then. I had learned a lot. That's why my book was, even though it was translated into 3 languages, 4 in total, I took it off circulation because things are changing and I am learning. So I cannot put it into written pages. No, it's changing. So as we understand more, we should share with people and invite other people to get in the wagon so they can improve on it also, because that's how humanity improves.
Right. And where do you go to learn more stuff?
You know the saying that when the student is ready, the teacher appears? Okay.
That's kind of where it's been.
Okay, different words. I went to different conventions, grazing of the Topman Grass Farmer. There I met Mark Bader of Free Choice Enterprises, a nutritionist, a biochemist at the Free Choice Cafeteria Style Minerals. And he taught me and mentored me in balancing for oxygen, hydrogen, and protein in rations. Then I got the franchise for Mexico for 20 years. And he was there every 3 months for a week or two, and we will travel the country, teaching and learning. That's the nutrition side. The grazing part, I got it mainly from André Voisin, because when I tried to adapt the holistic grazing management to my area, it just didn't fit. So I went and learned from this, but I still had a lot of questions. And I met Johan Sisman through internet and invited him to come to Tampico, Mexico with his wife. And they came and stayed for a month at my house.
Wow.
And I learned my missing questions from him. He knew more of the total picture than anybody else I have ever met. But he didn't know the nutrition side and the grazing. His forte, as he calls it, is genetics and selection. He's the very best in that. I am learning and I'm trying to be better every day. But yeah, sometimes I will get very good at it.
Well, you've definitely, I think one of the things that really impresses me about you is you do seem to take from all different areas, right? Like I have found that there's times when you get stuck in the grazing and you might miss this side of it. Or, I mean, that's one of the things that I've liked about holistic management is at least they look at the economics, they look at the human side, because the human side gets missed in a lot of grazing as well.
You want to know who taught me the human side?
Who?
John Kempf.
Yeah?
Yes, in the Iowa Convention, Practical Farmers of Iowa Convention in 2014. Uh, he didn't tell me directly, but I asked him the questions and he just pointed to the right answer. That's all I needed. I already knew because this came out in the scientific journals in 2012, but I already knew, but I wanted to do it by grazing, not by applying foliars. So I have been doing it by grazing and it works very, very well. Now, 2024, 12 years later, people are still not talking about it. That's incredible.
Yeah, it really is.
If somebody shows me a better way, I will change immediately. I will not keep doing the same.
That's amazing. And so what would you say, just as we kind of finish up here, what would you say or recommend to someone who's just doing a conventional style of grazing right now, whether it's beef or dairy? What would you recommend for them to try to get into more of a total grazing system?
Okay, let's start gradually with little steps that don't cost you money. In the spring, instead of chasing the tops of the grass all around the farm and creating overgrazing, allow at least 1/3 of your farm to stockpile and focus on quality in this other 2/3 so you can start improving your soil. If I need to define the one thing, only one thing that will improve your soil is stockpiling.
Is
So
stockpiling.
do that. Even if you do continuous grazing, leave 1/3 of your property to stockpile and you will see great changes.
Yeah, that makes sense. It would give that chance for everything to go to seed and to enhance the root systems, and that's amazing. I love it. And where can people go to reach you, Jamie, if they have
Oh,
any
yeah.
questions or?
Now, I have a ton of free information in my YouTube channel under Real Wealth Ranching by Jim Elizondo, Instagram, on Facebook, and my website is www.rwranching.com/learn. They're all my online courses. They're not expensive. Right now we have a Black Friday, but I know this will be aired later, so too bad. But still, it's the best investment you can make is in yourself. That gives you the greatest dividends.
That's incredible. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Ruminating with RealAg. It was amazing having you and finally getting to meet you.
Thank you very much. It's been great.
Thanks, Jamie.